Last week I showed you guys quite a few crafting supplies that I ordered from Temu. This week we're going to test them out and try some new techniques that I have never done before. So let's get started. For the first project, I will be using a 12-inch unfinished wood round. These come in several different packs. The pack that I ordered was a 6-pack for less than $11. I'm going to give this a coat of white paint. I'm trying to keep the coat very thin and smooth because I will be applying a stencil over that and I don't want any bumps or harsh surfaces. And I love that with the one coat, you could still see the wood grain through that. I'm using one of Temu's farmhouse stencils. So this came in a pack of 9. It is so stinking cute. I'm going to attach this to my wood round using some painter's tape. And I am going to apply that all the way around to make sure that the stencil doesn't move around. I am going to add a layer of Mod Podge, a very, very thin layer. This is going to help prevent any type of bleed through when I get ready to add my paint. So I'm just going to add some Mod Podge to my sponge, but then dab most of it off. That way I can keep a very thin layer on there. I'm holding the stencil down as I go to make sure that it doesn't pop up and to make sure that I don't have any clumps of Mod Podge underneath the stencil. Allow that to dry, and then we're going to take some black paint and apply it exactly the same way we did as the Mod Podge, holding the stencil down as I go to make sure that it doesn't bleed underneath the stencil. Then you can either let your black paint dry, which I did before I removed the stencil, or you could remove it while it's still wet. I'm just going to carefully remove all of that tape and lift the stencil straight up. Now, as I was doing this, one of the eyes on the cow, the paint did not want to stay. So what I did was clean up that little bit of the stencil where the eye didn't want to stay. And then I'm going to go back and just put the paint on just that part of the stencil. So that was my fault because I put way too much paint on there. So as I pulled it up, it just peeled right off. So that's an easy fix. We'll just put it back in place, add a little bit of paint, hold it down, and then let all of that dry. This is so cute already. So I do have to touch up just a few areas, and I'm going to go back in with some white paint to kind of straighten up some of the wording. And then I'm going to add a hanger to the back using some twine and hot glue and a little piece of ribbon to reinforce that. Or you could add a picture hanger on the back. That would be more sturdier. Now we're going to make something really pretty for the top, and I'm going to use some boxwood greenery from Walmart. I'm just going to cut a couple of stems off, cut them down to the length that I need so that it doesn't overhang too much on the top of the wood round. Then we're going to make a bow, and I'm going to take some wired burlap ribbon. It's 2.5 inches. I cut this down to about 16 inches and then just folded that over. Then taking some buffalo check ribbon, we're going to create a bow to set on top of this burlap bow. So I'm just going to pull that out and create a loop that's slightly smaller than the loop on the burlap. And I'll just hold that up there to make sure it's going to be smaller. Then I'll create another loop at the bottom, the same size. And then I'm going to twist my ribbon around, make sure it's facing forward. And then I'll create another loop on that side, come down. And I'm going to do this 3 times until I have 3 loops on each side. Then once I have all of my loops, I can cut that off. We're going to pinch it in the middle, and to hold everything together, we'll be using a zip tie, or you could use like a pipe cleaner. You just want to pinch it in the middle really tightly. Then set this on top of the burlap. Then we're going to set that on top of our greenery and attach it all together. So I'm going to use a zip tie because this is going to make it really tight and hold everything together. And then cut that excess zip tie off. Then I'm going to take another piece of the buffalo check ribbon, and I want to hot glue this in thirds. So I'm going to put a little bit of hot glue in the middle, fold one side over, then add some more hot glue, Fold the other side over so that it is folded in thirds. We're going to use this to cover up the center of our bow. It's also going to cover up that zip tie. I'm going to attach that using some hot glue, and also this will help me to be able to glue this down to the side. Since the zip tie does have a little portion that sticks up a little bit higher, this will give me something to add the glue to. Make sure you fluff out all of your loops on your bow, and then you can add this using some hot glue or E6000, or some pretty thin staples would be even sturdier. But this turned out absolutely gorgeous. You guys let me know what you think of this project. For our next project, we're going to use another stencil, but this came from a different pack at Temu. Now you can use a regular Sharpie or a paintbrush like this pack from Dollar General. I'm going to be using an oil-based Sharpie. I'm going to be adding it to this really pretty sign from Dollar Tree that has the two different hangers on the back. I'll be adding mine horizontally, and I'm going to tape that down with some painter's tape to make sure that the stencil doesn't move around. And I'm also going to be holding it in place as I go to make sure it doesn't pop up. I do have to take that oil-based Sharpie and kind of get it started on a piece of paper or a paper plate, and then very carefully go over the entire stencil. Now I'm very pleased with how it turned out. There were just a few little spots that I had to go back and touch up, like especially down at the bottom and then some at the top, where maybe the Sharpie didn't get all the way to the edge. But this was so easy and very inexpensive, and I love how it turned out. Our next project I'm really excited about because I'm going to use some of these iron-on heat transfers from Temu. This came in a pack of 9, and they have several different designs. I just chose the one with the sunflowers. You do want to cut your design out, and in the packaging on the back it tells you the temperature and how long you need to keep it in place. I'm using some of these sublimation magnets from Temu, and then you'll want to put a heat protective surface down like a mat or a towel. And I'm going to use some rubbing alcohol and a cotton swab to make sure that it is free from any kind of fingerprints or debris, and then you'll let that dry. I'm also going to be using this cute mini press from Temu that was less than $8, and I want to go ahead and heat up my surface first just to make sure that everything is going to adhere well, and I'm using a piece of parchment paper over top of that. Then we can take our iron-on transfer and apply this directly to the sublimation magnet. And I didn't know if anything was going to bleed through, so I did put some of that parchment paper over it just to protect that little mini iron. Now, you'll have to experiment with it because I did have to leave it on there a little bit longer than the directions on the packaging, and I did have to increase the temperature slightly than what was recommended just to make sure that it would adhere. But this turned out perfect. Now the piece, the iron-on transfer was a little bit larger than the magnet, so once that cooled down, I trimmed off the excess with a pair of scissors. But look how precious this turned out. These would make great gifts or items to sell. And again, they had so many different kinds of designs that you could purchase in the iron-on transfers. For the second magnet that I decided to make, I have already prepped it with the alcohol, made sure that was dry, and applied the decal. But before I peel that paper off of the top, I'm going to trim the outside edge, except for one little piece where I don't have to trim, so I'll be able to pull that back. It just gave it a little bit crisper of a line and was easier to cut than peeling the paper off first and then cutting. But look how adorable these are. Now, knowing that they were so easy to add to the sublimation magnets, I wanted to try this out on a wood blank. Temu has these 3-inch wood blanks you can get in a pack of 30 or 50. I'm going to go ahead and heat that up to prep it and get ready to add this iron-on transfer. Now I did have to leave the little mini heat press on there a little bit longer to get it to stick to the wood, but this turned out so precious. I wish that I had painted it so that the colors would pop more. So on my next wood blank, I decided to add one thin layer of white acrylic paint. And I wanted to see if this iron-on transfer would adhere to the painted wood. I did let that dry and I painted both sides, and then I added this cute sunflower. So what I learned by doing this process is that you want to make sure that you let the iron-on transfer cool completely before you try to remove that paper at the top. If you don't let it cool completely, it will peel some of that paint up. So as you can see here, it peeled up just a little bit on the corner. So again, you just want to make sure that it is completely cooled off before peeling it. Since mine was peeling up in one little area, I'm going to add a layer of Mod Podge on top. And while that's drying, I'm going to take this garland from Easter that I purchased from Dollar Tree, and it is the perfect shade of yellow for this, but I do want to remove the pink beads, so I'm going to pull everything off, and then I'll put back on the yellow and white beads. Once I have all of those on, the tassel is a little bit longer than I wanted it to be, so I'm going to trim that down along with that beautiful yellow ribbon. And then to be able to attach this to our wood blank or our wood piece, I'm going to use this leather hole punch from Temu. And this will take a couple of times. You just press it down, make an indentation, and press it again. And then you can take something very small to kind of poke that wood through that hole. And then we can add our twine through to create our beautiful garland. So I just tied mine at the top and then took some of that excess twine and wrapped it from that bottom bead down to the little wood piece, and then I'll tie that off in the back to kind of give it a thicker finish right there between the bead and the wood piece. And once you tie that, it is finished, and these turned out so cute. There are so many different things you could do with these wood blanks or these sublimation magnets, and the price is amazing with Temu. Now we're going to make some projects using epoxy resin, and I have never used this before. I am using some mica powders, some pigments, the resin, and some dried flowers. All of this came from Temu. You do order them separately. The first thing I want to do is cut some tiny pieces of the dried flowers so that I can set those to the side. You want to have those already prepared and ready before you mix your resin together. So I'm just going to cut a few of the flowers and some greenery, set those to the side, and then it is time to mix our resin together. So you do want to make sure you're wearing some sort of hand covering, some disposable gloves. You're going to mix 1 part of the epoxy resin, which is part A, to 1 part of the part B, which is the hardener, and you want equal amounts, so it's a 1:1 ratio. And then I'll mix this in a separate container, and this is like a silicone container, so it makes it really, really easy for me to clean up. And you'll want to mix it thoroughly for at least 3 to 4 minutes to make sure everything is mixed well. And I do recommend that you let it set for a few minutes before you add it to your molds to try to get some of those air bubbles out. So I'm going to add a little bit to this other cup and then add in some green mica powder. I'm just playing around with some colors. I want to see how they turn out, and I'm adding them to some keychain molds that again came from Temu. I mixed way too much green, so I'm going to make 2 of the keychains with that color, and then I'm taking a lighter and going over top of them to try to remove any of the air bubbles that have come to the surface. For the next one, I'm going to take that resin mixture and mix in some purple pigment And then once I mix that very thoroughly, we're going to add some of those to the keychain molds. But for the first one, I wanted to add in a little bit of white pigment to the bottom, and then I'll pour the purple on top, just kind of playing around with the colors. Then the next one, I'm going to add the purple directly to the keychain mold, and then I'll add a little bit of white on top of that, and then spread it around a little bit with the craft stick, and then add a little bit more purple on top of that. You just want to play around with it, see what kind of designs you can make. And then I took that craft stick and kind of just drug it across the top. It made the cutest heart. So I'm going to leave that one alone just like that. For the other one, I'm going to add in the clear resin mixture and then add in my dried flowers. Now, of course, this is a learning process, so I know that I'm going to need that to set up a little bit because those dried flowers will float to the top. So I'm going to set those to the side. I decided to go ahead and take the green and purple mixture, mix that together, and make a keychain. And then I have this cute vase mold from Temu, and we're going to add in that resin mixture. Of course, I had to make more because it's going to take a lot more of that mixture to make this vase. And I decided to add in the rest of the purple to the vase mold. Then I'll add in some more clear, and then I'm going to let mine set overnight because it is going to shrink a little bit, and I need to be able to add some more to that top piece where the flowers are, and to give it a little bit more of a shape at the top, we'll need to let them set overnight, and then we can make some more mixture to add to the tops. Now, what I learned with this is the second day when I made my mixture, I should have let it set a little while and let some of those air bubbles come out before I added it to the keychain molds, because those flowers were looking so pretty. But then when I added that second mixture and all those air bubbles got on top and then more floated to the top, it didn't turn out as well. But for the vase, I decided to go ahead, add in some clear, and then take some of that purple pigment and kind of swirl it around for the bottom of the vase. Even though I used the lighter, it did not get all the air bubbles out. The next day, this is how they turned out. They're so cute, but I was so disappointed in the flower one because it had a ton of bubbles on the top. And I'll see if I can show you here in a minute. I don't think it gives you a really clear picture of how many bubbles are in there, but I was disappointed about that. But the other ones turned out really cute, and I was a little bit concerned about how hard it would be to get this vase mold off, but it was so easy. It just peeled right up and popped out, and this vase turned out so cute. Now, it does have quite a few air bubbles in it because I am learning, and if you guys know any techniques with resin on how to keep those air bubbles out of there, let me know in the comments down below. But look how pretty this turned out. Now it's time to add the keychain. So this mold kit came with some jump rings and then the key rings with the chains, and then you can add those to your keychains. These would make such great gifts, or again, some items that you could sell at craft shows. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Let me know in the comments down below if you want to try out some new techniques like some more resins or wood crafts. You guys let me know what you're interested in. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. Please take care, and I will see you guys next time.